The next section we look at is leadership decisions that impact the EVP actually being implemented. I had a client call me once, or it was the office manager of the client, and she had hired somebody about 5 weeks prior who she just found out was 4 months pregnant. She was arguably stressed. I get that. I get it. But she told me about how she handled finding out that this team member was pregnant. Let me tell you, she did a spectacular job. She yelled at her at the morning huddle in front of everybody. Yeah, good times. Sometimes the stress that we feel lead us to say or do things that are driven from a place of emotion versus a place of fact. So having your actions reflect your intentions by having a process for making these decisions, I feel, is really key. And after answering about 10,000 questions over the last decade, I came up with a model that I call the CLIMB model. It's a process that I found that I went through with most of my clients to get to the answer based on 5 different steps. And using the example of a pregnant team member, I had another client who I love to death, by the way, one of my favorite people in the world. He had somebody who was going on maternity leave soon, and their policy was that they could take up to 8 weeks of unpaid time off. Well, she wanted to take 12, and he wanted to give it to her. So he called and said, hey, I just want to kind of work through this with you. Am I able to do this? I said, okay, let's put it through this lens. Cultural alignment. Decisions should clearly fit the established practice culture and reflect the kind of leader do you want to be. So should I do this? He wanted to be the leader that said, yes, please, take an extra 4 weeks and spend time with your first child. Absolutely. The next step we went through was the legal side. They need to be compliant, of course, with all local, state, and federal regulations. This is the time you loop in your consultants. This is the time you loop in your attorney, depending on the situation. Can I do this? Well, practice in Texas. Texas doesn't have any additional protections over federal, have 8 employees, so Family Medical Leave Act didn't apply here. It wasn't for a medical reason, so ADA didn't apply here. And we have no other additional protection in Texas for this. So can I do this? Yeah, absolutely, you can do this. The issues and outcomes. Anything that's predictable or any potential problems with this. What might happen? In this particular case study, what might happen is other team members, whenever they go on maternity leave, they would be entitled to the additional time if they're similarly situated. The team members who are there while they're taking leave might feel like they're being let down. You might have to hire a temp to come in to cover more of that time, so it could cost you more. There's some issues and outcomes that go along with this saying yes. It's not just a matter of, yes, absolutely, I want to do this for you. Let's work through it. So we go to M with those issues and outcomes, and we manage the risk, ensuring everything's documented. Okay, if she's taking the 12 weeks, we probably need to look at updating your policy in the handbook if that's going to be something you're willing to do going forward. We need to make sure we get the documentation of when she's returning. We need to get the resources in place for the team, maybe get somebody scheduled to come in as a part-time hire or a temporary hire, either way. What are we doing to protect the practice for whatever the situation is, even if it's a positive one, like this? And the last one is balance and buy-in from the team. So considering the needs of the practice versus the needs of the team, had he not been able to afford somebody to come in for 12 weeks, part-time or temporary, that would have been a potential issue. So balancing the need for the practice. He was in a good position, so he could do it. Getting the team on board. The team, they have an amazing culture. That was not going to be difficult, but in some practices, it would be. And so having a conversation with the team about what this is going to look like. We're going to have her out for 12 weeks. I'm going to need you to take on this amount of work. We're going to hire somebody else to fill this position. We need to maybe figure out a different way to do something else. But I want your ideas on that. I'm soliciting your feedback, because when you solicit their feedback, you get the buy-in and commitment a lot easier, right? So being transparent about the decision and soliciting feedback. Will my team support this decision? Hopefully the answer is yes, and if not, then we go back to the whole issues and outcomes, and there's a whole other situation that we run through this CLIMB model on. But I have felt that this has been a great way for us to communicate with our teams, to make decisions as a leader, and take that emotional element out of it when we have a process to follow. So we're not doing things like yelling at our pregnant employee in the morning huddle.